Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If everybody would please rise for the pledge. Okay, welcome to our October action meeting. Before we get started, I want to recognize the candidates for the Board of Education election coming up in November. We have 3 incumbents: Mr. Tomlinson, Mrs. Judge, myself, and we have 8 other folks running: Sally Tong, Lori Neary, David Rossi, Sanjay Sharma, Brunia Pillay, Frederick Donde, Ben Shore, and Rosie Arroyo. Okay, good luck to everybody. Please come out and vote. Our first order of business is the approval of our minutes. For today's meeting, we have the regular action meeting dated September 25th, 2018, the board work session and special action meeting dated August 14th, 2018, executive sessions dated August 14th, 2018, and September 28th, 2018. Any changes, additions, omissions? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt? Mrs. Judge and Mrs. Matlack. Mr. Sugars.
Mrs. Judge,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz,
Yes.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Abstaining from approval of the minutes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson.
Yes, to all. And I guess we need to take roll, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin, Mrs. Judge,
Here.
Mrs. Matlack,
Here.
Mrs. Seidel,
Here.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Here.
Mrs. Schultz,
Here.
Mr. Tomlinson,
Here.
Dr. Wong,
Here.
Dr. Dickinson.
Here. All right, I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Malash for our presentations this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. First this evening, Mrs. Wethington is going to share the HIB self-assessment grades for each one of our schools. It's a brief presentation, I think a couple of slides, Mrs. Wethington. And then there is an action item on the agenda tonight as well. So, Mrs. Wethington.
So you'll be approving the HIB self-assessment scores this evening. They're already on the P&L agenda. We have been implementing the anti-bullying rights law since 2012, and we started the self-assessment process in 2013. So each school works with the anti-bullying specialist and their school safety team to assess how well they're implementing the anti-bullying rights law. The self-assessment is not looking at the number of incidents that we have or the type or the quality of the investigation or the nature of the incident. It's simply looking at, are you implementing the law as designed by the New Jersey legislature? So each team works together to look at each element, determine the score that they've achieved. They have backup data that they use to support that score. And then there's a rubric that they complete to come up with a final number. So you can see there are the scores for all the schools in the district. There are 26 indicators. So a building would get a 0 if they did not meet the criteria. They would receive a 3 if they exceeded the criteria. To exceed the criteria is not easy in some of the areas. and average score is 2. So we hope that every school in the district would at least have a 52, which means they're meeting the criteria in the law. That's all we expect. In some cases, they're exceeding, and it really depends on the category. Some of the categories are they have a school safety team, how frequently the school safety team meets, how many community members are part of the team, do they have a police officer, do they have a community member who's involved in counseling or the I'm trying to think of another field that's identified. So there's lots of different criteria. You'll see Barclay has a 52. Barclay tends to score low just because of the nature of Barclay. We're not spending a lot of time talking to preschoolers about specific characteristics and how not to say things that are race related or about sexual orientation. And so Barclay tends to score a little low as compared to the other schools in the district, and that's been historic since we've been participating in the self-assessment process. Any questions? Familiar territory. All right, you're up. I'm going to pull you up.
Thank you, Mrs. Wethington. And as you shut yours off, just a reminder to the board again, this appears in the agenda. We'll ask you to accept these scores. We then submit them to the state. I think, what is it, November 16th, the date that we have to submit them to the state? Right, they just pushed it back. It was October 30th. They just pushed it back. And for our second presentation tonight, now one of the things we normally see with the HIB scores is the annual report that Mr. Saporito gives. Unfortunately, there's been some issues with the state's website in order for us to secure the information, so you will see that in November, right? I think November 13th that we said we're probably going to do it then to go through, so you'll see that then. Also tonight, though, I'm very excited to introduce or reintroduce to you Mrs. Val Sadwin and Mrs. Faith Holmgren from our assessment office, our teacher coordinator and our director of assessment, who are going to be presenting the assessment report from the 2017-2018 academic year. Ladies.
Okay, is the mic's on? Okay. Okay, here I am again. My once-a-year event. Every public speaking course says that at the beginning of a presentation you're supposed to tell a joke or have some sort of hook to get your audience, really attentive. So I Googled testing cartoons. And boy, there are sure a lot more testing cartoons these days than there were before. And there are definite sides to this debate that I really decided I didn't want to get into tonight. So, I used to be an actuary. And when I first started presenting assessment results, I would always tell an actuary joke. And nobody here was around when I first started presenting these test results, so therefore I can recycle my jokes. After all, if you can't make fun of insurance companies in general and actuaries in particular, who can you make fun of? So, what is an actuary? Someone who wanted to be an accountant but didn't have the personality. So, believe it or not, people claimed to miss these jokes when I stopped making them my intro. So, having said that, this presentation that I'm providing you tonight basically uses the template that was provided by the state to report the PARCC results and is very similar to the presentation from last year. Having said that, I start out with a slide that is not part of the state presentation. And it probably has more words than any slide in the presentation, but I feel it's important. There are a few students who are placed in other schools, both in district and outside of the district, because of a special education or English language learner program, who have an accountable school that is different from the school that they attend. The accountable school is based on where the student resides. Beginning with last year's presentation and continuing this year, any exhibit that displays school results are reported on an attending school basis, because building staff only has control over the achievement of the students who actually attend that school. So Park has 5 performance levels. Levels 4 and level 5 met or exceeded expectations, indicate that a student is on track to be college and career ready. Here we have the English language arts results for Cherry Hill by grade level, by performance level, from 2016 to 2018. At the far right, we have the change in level 1 and 2. We want to see lots of down arrows as students go from level 1 and level 2 to higher levels. And at the far, far right are changes in percentages of 4 or 5, those who met or exceeded expectations. And we want to see lots of up arrows as more and more students are meeting or exceeding expectations. Here is the similar exhibit for mathematics. And here are the changes compared to the state from 2016 to 2018 for English language arts. Parallel exhibit for mathematics. Then moving on to participation rates. We use English language arts participation rates as a proxy for participation because every grade 3 to 11 student is required to take the ELA assessment. And you can see that participations have increased at all grade levels since 2016 except grade 11. Grade 11 was the class of 2019 who had multiple pathways available to them to meet the assessment graduation requirement without having to take Park. The low grade 11 participation rates most likely reflect the students having met or plan to meet the assessment graduation requirements using an alternate assessment other than Park. Now we have the percentages by performance levels for the district next to the state by grade level for the current year, 2018. At all grade levels, we have higher percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations than the state for ELA. The parallel exhibit for mathematics. For all grade levels except grade 8, we have higher percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations than the state. Grade 8 excludes Algebra 1 and Geometry that was taken at the middle schools. Now we break it down by school. There are 12 elementary schools. If I tried to fit 12 elementary schools on one slide, no one would be able to read anything. So I divided up 6 on each slide alphabetically. All elementary schools have percentages meeting or exceeding expectations as high or higher than the state for ELA. Moving to the middle school. Beck and Rosa have higher percentage meeting or exceeding expectations than the state for ELA, and Acrucy is about the same as the state average. For the high school, West has a slightly lower percentage meeting or exceeding, and East is slightly higher than the state. Now the parallel exhibits for mathematics. First, the elementary school. In mathematics, all schools except Barton were above the state average, and Barton was only slightly below the state average. At the middle schools, Carusi's percentage meeting or exceeding expectations were lower than the state in mathematics, and this is grades 6 to 8 mathematics. And Beck and Rosa were above. And keep in mind that these results exclude the students who took Algebra 1 and geometry at the middle school. Algebra 1. At the middle schools, the students who met or exceeded expectations are much higher than the state percentages. East and West are below. Geometry. 99% of the students who took geometry in the middle school met or exceeded expectations. East is above the state average, West is below. Algebra 2. East had a higher percentage meeting or exceeding than the state, and West had a lower percentage. Now looking at the current, or the 2017 and 2018 results by subgroup. Here are the subgroups for English Language Arts. There are differences in the results by subgroup, as you can see. And all subgroups show comparable or rising percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA, except for Black or African American and English language learners subgroups. The parallel exhibit for mathematics. Again, there are differences in the results by subgroup, as you can see, and all subgroups show comparable or rising percentages of students meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA, except for the Black or African American and the English learners subgroup. Moving on to the dynamic learning maps, the DLM. This is an alternate state assessment for students with the most significant intellectual disabilities. There are 4 performance categories that are here: emerging, approaching, at target, and advanced. 42 Cherry Hill students took the DLM in district during the 2017-2018 school year. Here are the results for language arts and mathematics. The blue and the green on the graph show the students who are at target or above. In language arts, the percentage of students at or above target has fallen from 50% to 35%. In mathematics, the percentages have increased from 20% to 33%. Each year represents a small group of students and often a changing population. The next assessment is the Access for English Language Learner, or Access for ELS. It's a language proficiency test for K-12 students with 4 domains of listening, reading, speaking, and writing. All students who have been identified as limited English proficient is required to take Access for ELS whether or not they actually receive ELL services. There are 6 proficiency levels, and the guideline for attaining English proficiency in New Jersey is a composite proficiency level of 4.5. The determination of whether a student is proficient in English is a result of multiple measures, one measure being Access for ELS score. 354 Cherry Hill students took Access for ELS during the 2017-2018 school year. So, how to present the Access for ELS data in a way that is most meaningful. So I went to ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. One of the indicators of the ESSA accountability system is progress towards achieving English language proficiency. Taking the students who took Access for ELS in both spring of 2017 and spring of 2018, the baseline average score in 2017 was a 2.9. Based on the ESSA formula for a student who starts out with a proficiency level of 2.9, the student should get a 3.4 the next year to meet the target. On average, our students achieved 3.6, above their target. The guideline score for attaining English proficiency is that 4.5. Now, let's talk about your handouts. The pretty handout is a color copy of this presentation. And tomorrow morning, this presentation should be on the website, the district website, in full. The other handouts provide exhibits based on questions when these data were presented earlier in the month at the CNI meeting. Specifically, question 1 are the school details where the level 1 and 2 change arrows are in the wrong direction, or the level 4 and 5 change arrows in the wrong direction. So it provides by school information there. For number 2, question number 2, that shows the district factor group GH high school algebra 1 percentages meeting or exceeding, and I also threw it in Haddonfield and Morristown, so that you can compare that to the overall state average. So those are the high school district factor, split out from the middle school. High school only schools are on that list, just to compare and see how they compare to the overall state average that includes both middle school and high school Algebra 1 scores. The third question deals with the percentages of grade 8 students who take the Math 8 PARCC test, Algebra 1 test, and Geometry test. And the fourth question in exhibits relates to the question of how do the students who took Algebra 1 at the middle schools or the high schools perform later in Geometry and Algebra 2. So why do we have a handout, and why is it not part of the presentation? Right now the presentation has 28 slides here, and including these exhibits as slides would have been at least 14 more slides. And I think that you're hoping for a presentation and not a sleepover. So that's what I have to present, and we are open to any questions that you may have. Yes.
Mine isn't a question. I did just want to thank you for providing this in answer of the questions that we posed at CNI. Very helpful.
Great,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I know you explained it at CNI, and I know you've mentioned it here about the Algebra 1 and the Geometry 8th grade students taking that so that their scores are not in there. If you could just very briefly, so that those of us who were not on the CNI committee, could understand that part of it a little better. That I believe you mentioned the percentage of the students that take the Algebra 1 and Geometry before they even get to high school, and so
right. So
those
there are,
numbers
and
affect
actually,
them.
I think that is addressed in your question number 3 of the handout. The question was asked, what percent, because the students at the middle schools who take the PARCC Algebra 1 or the Geometry do so much better, well, certainly Algebra 1 do so much better than the high school results. And so, and part of that, it was verbally said at the CNI meeting that, well, almost all high schools have lower results than the state average, certainly have lower results at the high school rather than the middle school, that the middle schools these are accelerated kids. As far as what percentages of the students take Math 8 versus the other, I believe it was 45% in 2018 take Math 8, and the remaining 55% take either the Algebra 1, most of them take Algebra 1 or Geometry. So did I say the same thing? Is that enough?
Yes, thank you very much.
Regarding the dynamic learning maps, there's 42 Cherry Hill students that took the DLMs. Is that obviously it's a wide range of grades that did this, and the results all combined?
The grade levels are, and this is kind of why it's a small population and kind of why it changes. It is grade 3 through 8, and then grade 11 only at the high school. So it's not many to begin with, and then once they hit 9th and 10th grade, they're kind of out of the assessment, and then they're back in the assessment, and so.
But this 42 is a total of everybody.
That's a total of everyone who took it in district.
In district, okay.
of which it's interesting in looking at the results. For Park, they're very focused on accountable school. And so therefore, the out-of-district students, if a student resided in the Cherry Hill West district, went out of district, that out-of-district score is reflected in the West scores. Now, the way I present it, I pull that out. I say, no, we're only looking at those attending a Cherry, that actually attend West. The DLM, I'm only seeing what looks like the ones that are actually here. They're not going accountable. It looks like they are looking at that. We're only getting reports for the attending for DLM. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify on the grade 8 math counts for it says algebra A, and then it's broken down as algebra 1 and intro to functions.
Right.
I thought intro to functions was algebra 1. Has that changed?
No, they're both. So they're both. Hopefully, the exhibit says that they both take the algebra 1 Park test. So they are a group, but that intro to functions is like an honors. Is my understanding. It's an honors at the middle school algebra 1. And so I felt people would be interested in seeing that split.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Faith and Val and Vera. Very well done. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move into our correspondence. I know Mrs. Judge has something to start us off with.
Thank you. I just have a brief couple of comments regarding Garden State Coalition of Schools. The meeting on September 25th was with Senate Minority Leader Tom Kane. He asked probably as many questions of us regarding the topics that we discussed as we did of him. Lynn Strickland, who is the founding executive director of Garden State, who is now retired, she was in attendance, and she absolutely thought it was one of the better meetings we've ever had. And she was executive director for 25 years. He seems to be very willing to work on a bipartisan basis with his colleagues. One little interesting fact about him is that he was a firefighter in EMT in his lifetime. Just a couple of topics we talked about is we talked about the SFRA, and he agreed that the current SFRA is flawed. And we brought up, one of the superintendents brought up HIB statute and how it really needs to be looked at and how stifling it is for districts, although it seems to have changed a little bit. But there was some back and forth on that. And it was all in all, it was a very good meeting, sharing ideas and suggestions to a legislator. There are two opportunities to attend Garden State meetings next week in Atlantic City at the New Jersey School Board's conference. On Tuesday, October 23rd, Garden State is joining with New Jersey ASA, which is the Association for School Administrators. It's entitled Legislative Committee. That's at 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. I'm not quite sure what our role is going to be with Garden State because this is a new thing, but we're doing that next week. I will be there as a board member of Garden State. And then Wednesday afternoon is the usual joint school boards Garden State legislative update session. That is from 1 to 2:30 on Wednesday, and hopefully it's a bigger room. It's in room 304. I confirmed this afternoon that legislators that will be attending that on the panel will be Senate President Steve Sweeney, Assemblypersons Serena DeMaso, Patricia Egan-Jones, Senator Declan O'Scanlan, and possibly Senator Linda Greenstein, and there is a chance that Lou Greenwald may be there. That's exactly how it was worded. There might be a chance. And then the November Garden State meeting is going to be a night meeting up in Ridgewood on November 28th at 7 o'clock. And I did not attend last year, but I'm going to try to make it this year. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is, on behalf of the board, I attended the Cherry Hill Education Foundation golf outing, the annual golf outing on October 3rd at Pennsauken Country Club, along with Mrs. Matlack. It's always a great dynamic afternoon. It was a beautiful, beautiful day, even though it rained horrifically the night before. But it was really, and it was just a great afternoon with some of our vendors, administrators, retired teachers in our district, golf teams from both high schools were there, and they had a pretty successful year raising money for our kids in Cherry Hill. So that is my report. Any questions? Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Dickinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge and Mrs. Seidel.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. Very briefly, Ms. Scarpolino and I had an opportunity to present to Zone PTA on Tuesday, October 9th. This was some combination of board members' third presentation of the roles and responsibility overview presentation to the zone table. It was very well received. We had an opportunity to have some great dialogue with the zone PTA table, and we used the school board members' code of ethics as well as some facts and questions from the New Jersey School Board Association website to guide our dialogue with the community. So it was a great opportunity. Zone PTA has included the presentation, which all of you have seen in advance. They're including it on their website, so it's available for public should they want to take a look at it. We also reiterated that we would love and be happy to come out to either PTA exec board meetings or full PTA board meetings, PTA meetings, and I'm happy to report that yesterday at the Zone PTA luncheon, I had a PTA president say that they will be reaching out and asking us to present at their PTA meeting. So great news, and I just wanted to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. Any other correspondence? Okay, we'll move into our, excuse me, our board rep reports, and I guess we'll start off with East and Julia this evening.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Education. I have a brief update for you regarding recent events at Cherry Hill East. From the Student Government Association, on October 5th, SGA hosted Festival E, an open mic night fall festival event open to the student body. There was an awesome turnout, and it was a great way for students and faculty to bond and to showcase their talents at the start of the year. The school SGA officers also attended a student government conference at TCNJ on October 9th, where they discussed their plans for the future of SGA at East and had the opportunity to meet with student leaders from around the state. In athletics, at their senior day game, the field hockey team beat Williamstown 5-0. The women's soccer team made both the coaches tournament and playoffs, which will start in this upcoming week. The men's soccer team is currently over 100 power points ahead of last season. On the 6th, the East football team won their first game in 3 years with a score of 32-0. The girls' tennis team won 5-0 today in the South Jersey Group 4 Championships. And both seniors and juniors have started practices for the annual Powder Puff football game, which will take place on November 4th. In the arts, the theater department will be performing their first show of the year, Rearranged, A Night of Poe, this weekend. Performances will be this Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. This annual Crimson Theater production showcases underclassmen on the stage, while seniors and other upperclassmen help run the show as stage managers and acting coaches, along with the faculty directors. The Thespian Society is also planning their annual Halloween dance, which will take place on October 26th at 7 p.m. The entire music department is currently preparing for the Fall Preview Concert, which will take place on October 25th at 7:30 p.m. The Fall Preview Concert allows for every instrumental and vocal music group to perform one piece. For the community, on October 10th, sophomores and juniors took the PSAT. This was a half day for students, and there were no academic classes. Seniors and freshmen who weren't taking the test attended assemblies with presentations from staff, students, and the Cherry Hill Police Department. East was also an SAT testing site for the October SAT on October 5th, welcoming students not only from East but from the surrounding area as well. And last night, East hosted a college information night for seniors and their parents, where they discussed Naviance, the Common App, and College Board as the early action / early decision deadline approaches. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions? Cool.
Thank you. Next up, Nori.
Hello. As much as I love being Sonia's cheerleader from the sidelines, it's actually pretty cool to speak into a mic. All right, so here's the report I have for you on Cherry Hill High School West over the past month. In sports news, our Cherry Hill West varsity football team is currently 3-3, and they're still fighting on. We have an away game coming up this Friday versus Lawrence. Their senior night was last Friday, where our senior football players, managers, cheerleaders, and band members got to announce their future plans and say their goodbyes as well. And if you guys didn't notice, our West Lions cheerleaders were on 6 ABC News. Pretty cool. Also, our girls varsity volleyball team had their senior night on October 10th. They went up against Winslow, and they had an amazing win considering it was their senior night. And our Lady Lions cross country team ran at the Camden County Championship this past weekend at Timber Creek. They all did an amazing job. And our boys soccer team had a game against Seneca on the 10th as well, where they tied 1-1 with a goal from Zach Bruno, which was assisted by Oscar Jablonski. And as far as arts, music, and theater go, Newsies will be going up on the weekend of October 26th, starring Jenna Hopkins as Catherine and Javion Saunders as Jack. Shout out to Sonia. She's also in the show. I cannot wait to see her. And also, as far as music goes, I would really like to take a moment to recognize all the hard work our marching band has done. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Mark, they've really just put in so much hard work to get a marching band together, and we really look up to East Marching Band so much. So, and today we actually had auditions for our show coming up, Almost Maine, which we'll be putting up later in the year. And our winter combined instrumental and choral concert will be going up December 13th at 7 p.m. And our all-girls a cappella group Fermata had their first gig over the weekend, where they sang the Star Spangled Banner at Cooper River Park. And extra news, which I feel is very important, our Cherry Hill West teachers played at Cherry Hill's 14th annual Volley for Support. Even though we lost in the first round, our hearts were shown on the court that night. I believe everyone put in as much effort as they could. And today we actually had a student activities fair, which I believe is extremely important. I believe there is a very positive correlation between students who are involved and higher academic grades, it's very important to get involved, and it gives our students more of a chance to see what's out there. And if you get a chance to walk around West, if you notice, there are little quotes that are written all over our windows. And just to give our students more motivation, and I want to share a quote with you guys, which I thought was really cool. It says, "Be who you are and say what you feel, and those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind," by Dr. Seuss. Are there any questions? All right, awesome. Thanks for listening.
Thank you both very much. It's good to hear about the good things that are happening in the schools. All right, we'll have our first public discussion period. Your comments must be regarding items on this evening's action agenda. When you come to the mic, please state your name, address, and the number of the item to which you are addressing. You'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. Please note that the green light will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining. The light will turn red when your 3 minutes are up.
Good evening. My name is Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. I'm going to be talking about Section B, item number 2, project number 8132, and project number 8131. I guess tonight's question is, how could the original cost for the wall repairs at Cherry Hill East sounded like a reasonable price of $330,000, and all of a sudden that price jumped like 4 to 5 times higher. It seems to be also concerning to me that there was only 2 bidders in the whole job. If you look back on the June 22nd event with the roofers, we had 5 roofers, but with this bid we only had 2 roofers. And I guess the big question is, how could it possibly jump 4 to 5 times higher of a price from $330,000 to $1.75 million? My second question is on July 22nd, 2018, the entire board approved a cost of $519,000 to replace Cherry Hill East auditorium roof. Now we come back tonight, come to find out that we need an additional $1 million to fix this roof. So in the first bid, it stated specifications of the vendor to provide auditorium replacement roof at Cherry Hill East High School. So obviously this vendor completed it because all of his equipment is gone. So the job must have been done. So the big question is, how could we possibly need another $1 million to fix a roof that was just fixed? Thank you.
Anyone else on this evening's agenda?
Oh, no, you don't want me to use this, do you? Okay. Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. I believe there's still something called change orders in projects. Okay. And when we go out to bid, we wait for the bidders to come to us because it's public notice, correct? Okay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else?
A little nerve-wracking getting in front of a microphone, so excuse me. My name is Debbie Feinstein. I'm at 1902 Rolling Lane. I have 2 kids in Cherry Hill School. I have one that just started 6th grade, and I have one at Cherry Hill East as a freshman. I know that there's a lot of money going into fixing the school, but a few weeks ago, my son brought home a project. It was a shoebox project in health class. And
is this on this evening's
this
agenda?
has to do with the money that's going into the roof and the walls. He brought a live cockroach home in his shoebox project. He did not know the cockroach was in there. I did not know the cockroach was in there. I was very alarmed, as I'm sure some of you might be. If you opened up a shoebox project and saw a live cockroach crawling around inside the shoebox, when what was supposed to be inside was pictures. The project was in health class. Decorated, things that people know about you on the outside, things that people don't know about you on the inside. So I thought, let me look. Let me see what I don't know about my 14-year-old. And I was disgusted, and I was very freaked out. I later find out that the school has had years of issues with mice and cockroaches. It relates to the money going in for the roof and the walls and the mold, because this school is... I moved here from New York. I moved to Cherry Hill for a few reasons, and one of them was because of the schools. And I have to tell you that now that my kids are of the age of going to high school, I am embarrassed to tell my friends in New York what is happening in the high school here. I think there's good teachers. I think that mice and cockroaches and mold is not acceptable. I think it's horrible. Please, Dr. Malosha, I know you have kids at East. I mean, at West. I'm friendly with a woman that you know, Linda and Billy, and she says that you're a great guy and that you would do anything for your daughters and keep them safe. Please, I don't want to bring mice and cockroaches home. I know somebody else brought a mouse home in a backpack once. This was 6 years ago. Please do what you can to make these schools something that all the parents can be proud of. Please. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Turn the floor over to Dr. Malash for his comments.
Thank you, Dr. Dickinson. There are a couple of things that I would like to go over tonight. First, I want to thank the ladies for the presentations about what's going on at the high schools, and just remind everybody that we are in the heart of the fall season. There are still athletic competitions going on at both of the high schools and at all three of the middle schools. Check the district website, check the school websites. Get out to see and support the kids. We are beginning the theater season at each of our schools as well. If you have not had the talent and commitment that the children bring to the stage and to